Episode 2. The hours passed progressively slower as the leftover adrenaline the gold bars brought me staled in my bloodstream. It wasn't a good sign that the van was windowless or the rear doors were locked from the outside. Regret passed through me like a cold winter wind. It wasn't explained to me why I couldn't see where we were driving, or why the black turtlenecked men in Doberman masks regarded me with indifferent eyes. There wasn't much explained to me, just more disguises, an odd attire indicative to the mystery of roles people played in what was clearly more than an athletic society. I refused to believe the evidence of my eyes or the dread blanketing my skin. After all, it was logical that private races would necessitate secrecy, and keeping evidence of them happening would result in a blacked-out van. This begged the question I couldn't satisfactorily answer. Beyond the large sums of money, why were these races secret? There were plenty of races that were exclusive to some extent, but were publicized to attract ticket purchases and advertisers. With secrecy lurked ominous possibilities. It was too late for me to start tracking how far the van had gone, and what kind of turns I had taken, yet, 2 hours in, I began taking mental notes out of the need to keep myself preoccupied. The sharp, anxious edge of rapidly multiplying thoughts, and no one to vent them to, accumulated till my shoulders sagged, back curled, then face floated forward into the cradle of my sweaty hands, perpendicularly pitched against my bouncing knees. The smooth, winding drive ended when the momentum of the vehicle slowed, then turned onto a road with more bumps and turns that grew too numerous to count or remember. At some point, we slowed till we drove into some sort of confined space, since the idle sounded much louder and closer before the engine was cut. The driver and his passenger exited, leaving me alone in the back.
"Hello?"
I shouted.
"Are we there?"
More doors shut somewhere behind the car, leaving me straining for any sound in the following silence.
Hello?"
I waited in the quiet till I could hear my blood vibrating. Initially unnerved, I wondered why I didn't hear or feel it pump. It was an odd sensation feeling life shudder from my heart to fingertips, then struggle to find a reason to return to the organ that sent them there in the first place. A sudden sleepiness overwhelmed me. My eyelids drooped, then my head, and before I could reason or formulate a response to the confusing shock of my unresponsive body, I blacked out. There was nothing. No dreams, no notion of passage of time, no reason for a reason. Just the pop of my eyelids and the return of all sensation, all at once. White incandescent bulbs invasively overwhelmed my irises. The taste of dried spit reached from my tongue to the crusted corners of my mouth. I heard the gasps of restarted respirations beyond my own. There were others in the room, proven by blurry figures gradually sharpening in definition. Finally, I felt the cold, heavy cuffs of inescapable ancient iron chaining my wrists to the wooden bench beneath me, and found each of the 8 other rabbit-masked people in similar running shorts and tank tops to be chained as well. Their eyes were reflective of my own, in surprise yet varied in their emotional responses. Some wild, some dulled, some panicked, some focused. As a member of the panicked camp, and knowing that not every eye of the other 8 chained men and women displayed the same surprise at our new collective reality, only made me panic more. My breaths quickened, stalled, then hacked bits of spittle against the inside of my mask. The first one to speak was, coincidentally, a woman closest to the doors to our concrete cave with the number 1 printed on her shirt. She uttered a confusing moan that escalated to a desperate cry, her voice aching for the familiarity of soothing sympathy.
"Where am I? Who are all of you? What did they do to us?"
Number 7 inhaled and exhaled loudly, forcing more air into his bloodstream. He, number 3, and number 6 were the ones holding looks devoid of fear. With a final exhale, he slowly turned his head towards number 1. His bulky frame and Nordic knot tattoos rippled along tight strands of flexed arm muscle. He stated matter-of-factly, "I'm here to win. You? You'll be the first one to go." Number 1 screamed louder and thrashed. Number 3, the only other woman amongst us, who sat next to number 1 in the line of odds facing the opposing bench of even-numbered athletes, had enough slack in her chain to touch her fingertips to the frightened girl's knee, and enough maturity in her voice to pierce through her animalistic fear. "Baby, I'm gonna need you to breathe with me, and calm down. It's the only way you and the rest of us are gonna get out of this. None of us expected this to happen, and whatever happens, you're going to be brave. Be brave with me." Number 3's voice held near-perfect concern, near-perfect authenticity. Her voice was the visage of a life raft for the drowning dead man, threatening to attract the attention of skyward fins swimming just out of view. Number 1 held to the sympathetic mirage by quieting her whimpers and damming her once free-flowing tears so she too could focus on the prospect of survival. It was clear in the passionless stagnation of number 3's vocal tremors that she had no intention of being her support. She pretended because she felt what we all felt. A panicking person brought unwanted attention, and that kind of attention could be deadly for the drugged and handcuffed. Continuing to keep my mouth shut, I sat in silence with the other runners who thankfully did the same. Several minutes passed before we heard footsteps approaching the door. The scrape of iron lifted, and the sheer of our cell's thick metal doors swung outward. 5 guards in Doberman masks stood there with sophisticated rifles slung over their shoulders and pistols on their hips. 2 of them made their ways down either side of the aisle, unhooking our cuffs from the benches, while the lead guard stood at the center of the upright trio, issuing orders.
"You will not try our patience or the patience of our benefactors. To make this simple for your dull brains, your benefactors are the ones in the fox masks. You are not the first to run these races, and you won't be the last. So focus on not making problems for us, and we won't permanently end the problem being caused. You will follow us to a large room where your benefactors are having a party. The party is for them to talk and look at you. You will continue to remain handcuffed. You will not talk. You will not move. After maybe an hour, we'll take you to your common room where you'll be uncuffed, fed, and given instructions for tomorrow. Does anyone not understand what I just said?" "Good. Now organize yourselves single file from 1 to 9. Well done. You can follow orders. Now, follow me."
Even number 1's emotional bursts were silent under the flinching fingers hovering millimeters from their triggers. Through corridors of soft limestone, lit well enough to walk, yet barely enough to discern the blank-masked sources of hastened whispers, we moved at the lead guard's determined pace. Gossiping mouths reviewed us from doorways and adjunct walks. Building staff and personal servants alike gathered along our route, standing as close as they could with eager eyes, as though they were sampling our auras.
"Number 7 looks fierce. My master said while I was standing nearby that he fought. I heard one of the girls screaming earlier. Never a good sign. Great fun, though. I'll never understand how they get roped into it.
They're crazy or they're dull. That's how." They wanted fear, discomfort, defiance, anything. Like flies stealing at wafts of a passing delicacy, they sought to be in our presence, but just out of the guard's striking range. If a Doberman's mask did tilt in their direction, it resulted in furtive retreats and lowered heads. There was an unexplained hierarchy to be followed, and presumably enforced at gunpoint, if someone stepped too far out of line. After a couple of minutes, the corridor grew like a snake unhinging its jaw until its circumference stretched to hold 12-foot arcing bronze doors. From the rear of the line, I noticed how each other competitor adjusted to the magnitude of what stood before us, and how their minute, shifting, shuddering, shoulder-clenching behaviors were stifled once the doors opened to the brilliance, the raucous performative shrieks, the pomp, and the melody of refined live music delicately weaving between it all. Someone shouted,
"They're here!"
Deafening was an understatement. The applause of seemingly hundreds of well-dressed socialites in various stages of mania dogged our steps as the Doberman guided us to the center of the cavernous ballroom. Ahead of the countless fox masks eagerly peering over and around each other, a familiar dark voice boomed.
Make way for the competitors. Give room, observe, make your pre-race bets.
The path widened at his command, and space was made for us to stand shoulder to shoulder. In the belly of aristocracy, the head guard made one final pass in front of us, recommunicating his orders with a cold glare and the subtle lift of his rifle before disappearing into the crowd.
Mr. Tortoise raised his glass and shouted, "Let the festivities continue."
Roaring responses kick-started the never-ending revolution of performative laughter, gluttonous shoveling, silent plotting, side glances, loud subject-changing proclamations, fiery rebuking, and playful slapping, always paused by a glance at the line of rabbits before they spun back to their social circle. Despite the well-lit ambiance from rows of electric chandeliers, despite gold-leaf cherubims staring down on me from small ornamental enclaves, despite the Grecian-inspired limestone columns, despite all the opulence, the room felt dark, and I felt hollow. Trying to distract myself from the foxes mulling around us, I looked up to the Michelangelo-esque frescoes of angels and demons in framed sections between columns. The scenes started with depictions of large battles, but as the depictions spread towards the corners of the room, the scenes became more intimate, then disturbing, then far too much for me to comfortably describe or continue looking at. A fox-masked man slightly shorter than me, sporting a thick black crew cut, shimmering gray suit, open collar white shirt, and black leather dress shoes approached me. A featureless masked woman in a plunge-necked high-split dress, assumedly Mia from her hair and the way she walked, followed him. He circled me, eyeing the definition of my calves and thighs, exposed by the 5-inch inline of my white silk running shorts. Returning to a relaxed stance in front of me, he took a sip from his champagne flute, a thick gold ring glinting from the lifting of his hand. Once his flute lowered, I realized that unlike my mask, the fox masks were designed with a snout capable of drinking and eating without impeding their consumption. His light blue eyes tenderly drew my attention, as though he and Mia were a couple perusing dogs at a kennel, and he still hadn't decided whether or not to purchase me. Out of the corner of my eyes, I noticed that the longer he didn't speak, the more his peers looked over, whispering attentively towards our interaction. Finally, he spoke loud enough for the socialites to hear. "Tell me, Nine, why are you here?" Just a couple hours ago, I answered that same question at Dr. Demos's request. Once asked again in this new setting far from the comfortable lounge sofa, the rows of books, and the urging of a psychologist, the question took on new connotations and consequences. I recalled the doctor's advice on the need for honesty in communal vices. I didn't feel I could honestly relate with the level of vice in this community, but I knew I needed to inspire confidence in my ability. Suddenly, the confident, opportunistic voice I'd only met today, still foreign to my normal thought processes, took control and responded with an equally loud reply. "I'm here to win the grand prize. I want that cash." His posture straightened. Raising his glass, he chuckled, words burgeoning pride.
Honesty will get you far with me, 9. I see I made the correct decision in bringing you here.
Rational mind returning, I lowered my voice, confusion obfuscated by my mask, but told through my stance.
I don't mean to offend you, but I scanned a QR code and followed the instructions. Do I know you? The attempt to prevent offense will also go far with me, but make sure it doesn't turn into ass-kissing. As for your question, no, you don't know me. But I know you, and paid to have the QR code placed along your running route.
I stiffened, realizing the code was no coincidence. I was scouted. He ignored my posture change, continuing.
You may not be as athletically gifted as the other competitors, but as you'll soon understand, speed is not the only trait required of a rabbit. We'll speak more later. Just do as you're told, and I'll make sure you have everything you need to win this. For us.
He smacked my shoulder and tapped my chest a couple of times with his fist.
Enjoy the show, 9. Something always happens at the benefactor's ball.
Mia curtsied, then followed him closely back into the crowd. With their exit, the hollowness of opulence returned. The mask felt heavy and hot. Struggling once again to control my breathing, I shut my eyes, trying to block out the external stimuli spiking my anxiety. I needed to focus on something so I wouldn't freak out. That's when I remembered the gold bar Mr. Tortoise set before me. Its image brought a calm reassurance. Its heavy thud, the buttery surface, and the thought of it multiplying in a vault brought me some peace of mind. After taking a deep breath, I opened my eyes again, more sure in my purpose. I looked around the room and back at the line of rabbits on my left. My heart dropped. At the other end, I saw someone shaking. Rabbit number 1 felt what I felt, but couldn't make a successful adjustment. It hurt to see someone so beautiful, so frightened. My impulsive imagination continued the obvious beauty of her figure past her long blonde hair, to invent a model's face hiding behind her mask. What I noticed and kept to myself was unfortunately noticed by others from the surrounding skulk, and they weren't as reluctant to share their observations. A woman in a revealing red sequins dress prowled towards number 1. She was thin and beautiful as well, but the nearly concealed wrinkles cracking beyond the edge of her mask betrayed her age. A man followed her, observing the interaction with crossed arms. Looking back at him for some sign of approval, the woman withdrew to his side. Loud enough for the gallery to hear, she said,
You know I can still see where your eyes are pointed.
The man snorted, then took his turn stalking number 1. Walking behind her, he stared downward for a bit, shrugged, then returned to a wide posture a foot from her trembling frame.
You know, I think I know why Tortoise chose her to be one of the 2 wild cards.
He looked back at the woman.
He can still get it up.
The woman shrieked more than laughed, one hand's loose fingers covering her mouth.
I think you're right, dear. You know we really must have her. Perhaps, he responded. Gorgeous eyes, but you never know. This bunny could be a pig in disguise.
Taking the opportunity to pounce, the woman tugged at number 1's shirt.
Most definitely, darling, but it's not the first time we've asked someone to keep the mask on.
I felt a presence at my side. It was Mr. Tortoise, partially concealing himself, watching the interaction from over my shoulder. If it weren't for his proximity, I would have never heard it, but I swore I heard him growl. Not wanting to alert Mr. Tortoise, I continued to pretend he wasn't there, directing my attention to the same scene, gathering more eyes by the second. The man suddenly grabbed number 1's hands and forcefully twirled her into a close dance.
Oh dear, we really must have her.
Number 1 cried out, then pleaded.
Please let me go.
The man continued to hold her close, overpowering her struggle. The woman scoffed, then looked around nervously.
Her chest will be too heavy for her to keep up.
let someone else sponsor her and we can rent her between races.
Number 2 turned his attention to him, fists clenched, but still at his side. I could feel his internal struggle from the other side of the line, the voices in his head debating as to whether invoking the wrath of the guards was worth stepping between number 1 and the predator. I mirrored his pose without realizing it, feeling my own disgust creep from the pit of my stomach to the iron in my limbs. I felt Mr. Tortoise's steady hand on my shoulder. Finally, I looked to him. For the second time that day, our eyes locked in understanding. He shook his head and patted his vest. Barely perceivable from the volume of the room, I heard him whisper,
"They're not well liked. Wait till they cross the line."
His hand dropped, his knees bent. Then he slowly moved behind the line of competitors, keeping himself just out of sight of the couple's vision. In an increasingly urgent voice, the woman continued,
What, you don't have enough fun with our maid? She's a toy to be wound up and ran, not hung in our red room.
The man halted, grabbing number 1's neck with one hand and placing the other on the small of her back.
"Oh, this little rabbit's winding me up, all right."
The crowd around them grew, some in raw perverse interest, but others in refrain pointing to Mr. Tortoise approaching. The display was so repulsive, the other competitors' mannequin portrayals melted. Except for number 3, whose forward focus seemed near catatonic, there wasn't a single person who wasn't watching. My mind reeled from the queasy strain sapping my body of its strength. Why did no one stop them? There must have been hundreds of people in the hall, all watching. They did have armed guards, but would they attack whoever defended her? Why weren't we moving? Was I now complicit in whatever this was? Was this evil? Was I evil for standing there? The once hunched Mr. Tortoise straightened, then somehow grew in height, appearing larger than life. Looming behind number 1, his presence demanded the attention of the 2 foxes. In a serrated voice that cut a muted wake through the ambient noise of the room, silencing the music and stilling the hearts of all who heard his auditory tendrils forcing their ears to receive his warning, he said,
"Dear members, I would implore you to step away from the rabbit. Not only have you not purchased her, but as Madame Fox has stated, this rabbit will be raced in our most holy of celebrations. Any agreements made will be after her contractual 6 weeks, should she complete them. Until then, you will step away."
At each separation of sentences, the man stumbled backwards as though he were being physically buffeted by the frustrations of an impatient tide after the calm had passed and the storm nearly struck. This metaphysical push upon him initially caused the fox to shiver, till he looked around and saw every mask trained on the dynamic struggle of wills unfolding. The repulsive fox tried matching Mr. Tortoise's posture, unsuccessfully attempting to shrug the palpable weight concentrated at the center of the great hall. Overweight, under-equipped, overindulgent, underwhelming, he proclaimed for the approval of the gathered Olympians.
"Defending an outsider? Never thought I'd see the day our proud game master would dismiss our desires so easily."
Like a slow-motion airburst expanding from the site of an irreversible detonation, the weight of Mr. Tortoise's voice only increased.
"You will obey my command while in my hall."
The repugnant fox turned to address the silent onlookers, finding cold observance of those who would watch a sentenced man pridefully plead before the jury of his peers.
My apologies. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you thought of yourself as being several decades younger, and as though you could stop me. I'm the reason your lights are on. I'm the reason any of you have the energy to live your elevated life. Without me, every part of our pretty little paradise would crumble. So if I say I want this rabbit, no game peddler is going to stop me. He widened his stance, threw his hands out as though he had claws to intimidate the approach of danger, then seethed back towards Mr. Tortoise. No matter who you say your patron is.
His better half rushed to his side, trying to pull him away.
Dear, you're obviously drunk and we should...
The fox swung his arm, backhanding her with a painfully poignant smack, the echo of which melded with her spittle-fueled cry, launching the chorus of gasped responses. Pointing down at the woman, he yelled,
"Know your place!" Then grabbed number one by the arm. "You're coming with me."
I don't remember seeing Mr. Tortoise move, yet he appeared behind the man, holding a dirty, pock-marked revolver to the back of his head. The fox stopped in his tracks, frozen by the click of its pulled hammer. The woman shakily climbed onto her heels. One snapped, plunging her back to the polished marble floor. On her knees, she crawled forward, bleeding. The seconds stretched, counted only by the calculating gears of Mr. Tortoise's head. Time was a factor in his game, and he forced everyone to acknowledge his control of it.
"Please, he didn't mean anything, Mr. Tortoise."
An ear-shattering pop burst from the blown brains of the fox, whom presumed too much. His body collapsed. Number one cried, and the female fox screamed. As she finished her prostrated journey to her worse half's side, cradling him, she tried to use her dress to stifle the crimson pool draining from beneath his cracked mask. Mr. Tortoise turned the gun to number one. Her face buried in her hands, she knelt beneath the eyes of every gaze in the room, sobbing.
Number one, you have 10 seconds to stand back in line.
She shook her head and continued crying.
Mr. Tortoise loudly counted. 8.
She looked up, quickly looking at the room for someone to save her, someone to give her the assurance that this was all a performance, and a camera would appear. The curtains would pull back, and everyone would laugh. She looked for a more sane reality.
5.
Shaking her head, she launched herself desperately towards a set of double doors, pushing those who weren't quick enough to step aside. She was fast, beautiful, somehow graceful in the strides she took to escape the inescapable. Unsurprisingly, the aristocratic foxes spent more time thinking of how they were being viewed by their peers than the bolting rabbit dividing their ranks. Some benefactors gasped. Others pointed dramatically. A couple shielded their eyes. One large woman fell in a mock faint to the chagrin of the man struggling to hold her.
0, Mr. Tortoise muttered.
A second loud pop. A second crash of soft flesh and bone. A second plume of smoke. She was the first of us to die. He turned to address the room, leaving the slumped bodies to prove the authority he held.
We are a society of simple rules. Rules that allow us the pleasure of an elevated life only granted to us few willing to take it. If we take too much, or step too far over the line, it doesn't matter how much you contribute. You break our simple rules. We must always adhere, and always remember why we race our sacred rabbits. Thankfully, number one was a wild card, so after some communication, I'm sure we will remain in good standing. If any believe I have made an improper judgment, please step forward.
They just stood there, swirling their drinks, checking their watches, picking at the edges of their clothes. They weren't nervous. They were bored.
Good. Bids for Mr. Glow's holdings will start tomorrow. Candidates with experience in nuclear management will be evaluated first. Mr. Tortoise then turned to face us. You, our rabbits, are lucky this day. I will explain more at our lighting ceremony, but know that tomorrow will be free of moral consequence in the recent absence of rabbit number one. I suggest using each moment as an opportunity to evaluate the weaknesses of your fellow competitors.
You want to win. Mr. Tortoise turned back to the foxes. Now, this is a hallowed night, the first of many in the coming weeks. Merriment is required.
At the clap of his hands, cheerful music and warm lighting returned the room to its celebratory tone. Bizarrely, the party continued without missing a beat. Conversation started where they had left off. Laughter echoed through the hall, and the machine of performatory social interactions hummed to life. Not a word shared about the bodies they stood near, not a foot shifted from the pooling blood around their shoes. Servants entered wordlessly, begging for pardons at the disruption of carrying away Mr. Glow and Number 1 to unknown depths of the palace. The fox in the red sequins dress followed the body solemnly till the guards stopped her from walking beyond the ballroom. I no longer cared to pay attention to the exorbitant vices or the actions of the other competitors. I looked at the ground in front of me. I stood in my assigned spot. I occasionally stole sluggish glances at the blood no one cared to mop. I could feel the confident new voice knocking somewhere inside, requesting control so I wouldn't have to feel the souring shock of murder curdling my soul. I resisted and blocked the voice from entering. The pain was necessary. The coagulation of conscience required. My thoughts ceased, my body numbed. I didn't care to part from despondency till the guards returned, demanding I move.